Hi, Dave from Buzzy here. In this video, I'll run you through the process of setting up a login flow using the Buzzy Figma plugin. Now, one big disclaimer up front, this won't work out of the box with the free version of Buzzy that you get with the Buzzy Figma plugin. It needs you to have your own deployment running, which will require jumping to a paid plan. That said, the principles and the way that you're going to do this, I can explain using the free plugin, and all the settings and so on are there for you to have a look at. So let's get started. So here's a simple app design in Figma. It's not fully fleshed out, but we've got the login flow going. If I zoom in a bit, we have got a login screen. Now, Buzzy uses a passwordless login token system. So the user enters their email, gets sent an email with a login token, click on that, they get logged in. So there's a login screen, there's a pending screen which tells them to go check their email, has a link back to try again in case they don't get the email. There's terms and conditions with an accept and a decline. Then there's an onboarding complete screen, which might be a thank you very much, you're done type of scenario, and then there's the app home screen. Now, to make this app require login, obviously, you're going to need to make it private, which means none of its screens are available to anyone who hasn't logged in. But to let someone log in, you've obviously got to exclude some of those screens. So Buzzy's got this concept of special screens, of which these four are examples, which are still available to anyone even if the app has been set to require a login. So that lets you expose these login screens and functionality to anonymous users so that they can sign up and sign in. So in this file, I'll try and make this available later, I've got a bunch of annotations. It's already been marked up with the Buzzy Figma plugin, and basically I'll turn the notes off for now. But what we have here is a simple form with a single email field and a submit button. All this does is basically someone puts an email in and they'll hit submit. The way we then want this to work in terms of setting up their login, we'll need to go to Buzzy settings. We define these special screens that I mentioned just before, and then we have to put an action on this form that says once they submit it, do something with that submit, which will be, again, these are screen grabs from the Buzzy CMS backend, just to annotate this file basically so you can sort of see what's going on. We'll have to go in to the login app, micro app that we set up, that this submit button is submitting to, and add a rule that then generates an email that sends someone that login token. So let's start with that basically. Let's go to, so here's my, this file's been marked up, I've published it previously, but for the purpose of this demo, here we go, we're going to create a new one called login demo. Now this first part, the login screen and the login pending, so the ability to sign in, sign out is available in the free version of Buzzy with the proviso. It'll only work for existing Buzzy users, so you can use it yourself. Anyone else who's signed up to Buzzy via the Figma plugin can use it, but people who haven't registered to Buzzy in that channel or via the plugin, it won't work for. But you can do this yourself, obviously, if you're developing an app, and test it yourself so you can see it working, right? So we've published this app, so let's go look at the preview URL. It's opened off screen. Let me just, we'll get to that later. It's going to load in here and jump back, and what I might do is also open the back end CMS. Right, so here we can see there's our start screen. Now because we haven't defined anything yet, when we go to our app definition back here and we zoom out, for instance, I'll turn the notes off just to make it clearer. If we go to our design and we look at our screens, it's already been marked up. There's our start screen, the home screen. Now, if you're developing an app this way, the home screen, or what you define as your start screen, stays the same. It's always going to be home. You don't need to make login your start screen or anything like that. This is going to be automated. So your start screen is as it normally was, still your home screen or your landing page or whatever it is you want to do. These extra screens, or the onboarding and the login stuff, gets inserted automatically in front of your start screen. So if we jump back to our browser, there's our start page, because we haven't defined any of the login stuff yet. It's just where we start up. There it is. It's responsive. Hurrah. We'll leave that as is. Now here, I'll put this in here, is our CMS, our backend. Now we'll see that when we published, we have two micro apps defined, a login one, which is the one we're going to look at now, and a user one, which we'll look at later. So jumping back to Figma, here we go. All that login form does is submit an email address to the form. So if we jump back to the browser, we can actually do that, right? Actually, no, we can't, because we're on our start screen here. We need to make that login screen show up first, right? So we turn our notes back on. The first thing we've got to do is define these screens. Now, the other thing, by default, when we publish the app, it's set to public, right? So we need to go into the app settings, which is in this drop-down menu here, settings. This is where our basic app settings are. Now, under privacy, if we want to use a login flow, we need to make it private. Default is unlisted or public. We want it to be private. So now no one, if I refresh this now, I'll still be on there because I'm actually logged in currently as myself, right? So I won't do that. It's pointless. What I might do is we'll open a new incognito window and we'll do it there. So let's just go to this URL. We'll get this app link. There it is. Let's go have a look. There's our incognito window. Because I've just made that app private and this window doesn't know who I am because I haven't logged in. Here it is. I'll just make this a bit smaller so we can see it. Right, so there's our and it defaults, because we're on the Buzzy app.top buzzycompany.com server, it's defaulting to a login screen for Buzzy itself because we haven't defined anything else. When we go back to our app settings here, down in this section down here, we can define our login screen, sign in screen. There it is. If we make that login, and while we're at it, we'll set the confirmation screen as well, which is that pending screen. And now, if I jump back to this, actually I need to just hit that URL again, because this is actually, the URL's actually gone back to the Buzzy sign-in screen. So if we'll try and hit that app again now, it's recognized the app's private, but this is my anonymous user here. It's recognized the app is private, but has substituted the app's login screen instead of the generic Buzzy one, right? So now, if I enter my email address, my work one, oops, at buzzy.buzz, and hit login, there we go. That form has submitted, and the action screen on the form was to this login pending screen, which is telling me to go check my email. Now, if I go check my email at the moment, nothing's going to happen because we jump back to Figma. We haven't defined this action yet. So there's no emails being generated. All I've done, if I go to look at our, close that one because we don't need it, but if I go to look at our back end, there's my sign-in attempt. I've submitted my email address to the login app. Nothing else has happened except I've successfully submitted, right? What we need to do now is define an action that when someone submits this, we fire off an email. Jumping back to Figma, that's what's described here, right? So we need to go to the login screen and we need to define a rule to do this. So we'll go to the, sorry, not the login screen, the login micro app, which this is here, this container for our login results. So we'll go to properties. We can ignore all these tabs. We want to go to the advanced tab and we need to add a rule. Now, when our rule is when a row, so a row is a result set or a result when someone submits a row to this micro app or this data container. So when a row has been submitted, we need to perform an action. In this case, we want to send a login token. The email field, again, the login token is to be sent to an email, so it requires this app to have a field defined as the email. In this case, we've already called it email, which is handy. Now the route, there's two routes available to a Buzzy app. One is app and one is go. And the only difference really is in this URL up here. You'll see this is go. So go is the Buzzy CMS interface. App is, if I jump over here, app, you can see up here, is my designed published app interface. And so in this case, we want the login token to go to the app interface. And the app we want is the one we've just published, which is this one, which is called login demo. And the screen we want, this is the screen once a user has successfully logged in. It's defaulted to home, which is our start screen, and that's the one we basically want a user to start at once they log in. So that's it. That's our rule defined. We can click add rule. There it is up here. That's that done. So now, if I go back here, and we'll try again. I'll enter my email address. This is an incognito window, so if I click login now, same thing. You'll see I'm back on this, okay, go check your email screen. Back here you might have noticed a new row was created in this app. Now, if we are lucky, I would have also received an email with a login token. So we'll go over here, and there it is as a do not reply link. There's a previous attempt up there. So this is the last one that's sent 0 minutes ago. These will expire, so if you send a new one, it'll supersede the previous ones. The older ones won't work. So all I'm going to do, because I need to go to an incognito window with this, so I'll copy the link address. We'll jump back to this. If I now put that address in and hit enter, it's thinking about it, it's signing me in. It's appended a null, but if I hit refresh, there it is, taking me to the home page. Now, so that's the first part basically done. We jump back to Figma. We have got our sign in or login form, which is basically a single email with a submit button. We've defined our login and login pending screens as special screens, which are available even though the app's been set to private. We have got a login rule applied to that submit action. So we now generate this login token, and when someone receives the email, clicks the link in the email, they get taken to the home screen. Now on the home screen, you'll notice we have the option to log out. So this is probably a good opportunity to talk about the plugin itself. We've got, as I mentioned earlier, this has all been marked up already. Our screens are defined and so on. Now when you go to, so for instance, there's our logout button or link. It's an action. So like the same way you define a normal navigation action or so, or whatever it might be. There's a specific type. If you see in your actions menu, excuse me, if you see in your actions menu, there's a list of options, including navigation stuff. There's stuff to do with views, which is, you know, returning results and data. There's stuff to do with forms, submitting and deleting and so on. And there's stuff to do with login and onboarding. And there's a couple of special actions that are involved with this. One of those, now that we're logged in, is log out. So defining log out on a button will log the user out. The other three are accept license, don't accept license, and complete setup. So that's to do with the obviously terms and conditions accepting and completing onboarding. For now, we're looking at this login one. So, you know, there's also the same way normal actions or submit actions or whatever work. We've got an action screen that you can define, which is something that you want the user to go to once that action has been complete. In this case, we want them to log out and we want them to go back to the login screen. So, seeing as this has already been published, if we jump back to here and I click log out, it will take me back to the login screen. I've effectively logged myself out now of Buzzy in this browser window. So that is basically the first part of the demo. Now the proviso that works out of the box with the Buzzy Figma plugin and the free version that you get. Proviso is that the user that you're signing in as, the user that you're signing in as here needs to exist and have signed up to buzzycompany.com via the Figma plugin. So it'll work for yourself because you're obviously using the Figma plugin and you've signed up that way and you're using the free version. If you've got clients, if you want to let them test it, they'll need to have signed up via the Figma plugin themselves. Beyond that, you need to move to your own custom deployment of Buzzy to get this working correctly for any user. So that's the first half of this. Now the second half is about the onboarding and terms accept. This stuff won't work with the free version of Buzzy. You're going to need to be on your own deployed server for that. But the principles and the concepts and the way it works, we can still talk about in this demo. So we've got the first half of this, which is the login screen. Got a user jumping straight to the start screen. Now, if we want a user to have to go to a terms accept and an onboarding process in between that, clicking the login token and getting to the start screen of the app, we need to define those again in the app settings, which is, again in our annotations, it's this stuff up here, onboarding screen and license screen. It hasn't been defined for this yet, so if we jump, we can jump back to our browser. There it is. Go to the app settings. There they are. And scroll down. Now we've done the login pending. Now the onboarding screen would be, we've called it onboarding, and the license screen is terms accept. Now remember, for this stuff to work, your Buzz has to be, or your app, your Buzzy app has to be set to private. That's one gotcha there. Actually, another thing to mention with this, if you publish to a new Buzz, you will need to redefine these screens, because when we go to our, this is our app backend basically, these screens have got unique IDs. If I publish this to a new instance of the app and I delete this one and republish via the plugin, those screens won't be defined. You'll have to redefine those for the app because the IDs will have changed. So you'll have to come back in and redefine these 4 screens depending on, you know, what screens you've published. So that's another quick gotcha. If you do republish, just remember you'll have to redefine this stuff. Okay, so we've got the onboarding and the terms accept. We'll go back to our Figma view. Well, I can close that and go back to Figma. Here we go. So all that will do is we'll now insert the requirement for a user to go to post login. You make them go to the terms accept screen. Now, on this screen, again, the design's up to you. This has been, once you define it as the license screen in your app settings, this will be also available to someone before they have completed. They'll have logged in by this point, but they won't have completed sign up. So you can design this however you see fit. There's 2 important buttons that you probably will want to place on this screen. The first one is accept the terms. So again, when we look at this button in our actions, it's just defined with a normal action. The action type, again, we scroll all the way down to the onboarding section here, and it's called accept license. And then you define the action screen. Where do you want to go after accepting the license? Again, you could go straight to home or whatever, or to open an alert if you want that says thanks very much. Or you could go to a dedicated onboarding screen. Now this gets a bit involved. There's a whole bunch of instructions and options here, but the basics of it is you get to an onboarding screen. The user then has to click a button, which again has got a special action on it to do with onboarding called complete setup. And that basically tells Buzzy and your app that this user's completely finished sign up and they're good to go. So from here on in, when they log in, they will be taken straight to wherever they need to go, the start screen or whatever it is you define as the start screen of your app. If they abandon the process at either of these 2 screens, between logging in and hitting the start screen, if they decide to close the browser or they exit without clicking either the accept button or the complete sign up button, they will be redirected to these screens the next time they revisit your app. So kind of it remembers that the user hasn't completed sign up and will take them back here until they do, basically. So jumping back to the terms accept, they can also decline your terms. So we've got an action there, which is don't accept license. And again, you can define where you want to go. You could go to a screen that asks why not, or you could just go, oh, well, fair enough, log you out, you're back to the login screen or whatever it might be, right? So that's those 2 actions, decline your license or don't accept license, and accept license and continue. And yeah, so then the simplest version is, yep, there's some sort of thank you message and a button which needs to be clicked, which basically tells your app that this user's completed sign up. Now, you may have an app where someone needs to do some extra stuff as well as accepting terms. They might need to provide some extra info. They might need to provide an image or a user avatar and so on. So if we jump to here, so this is where things get trickier. So the required step is they have to hit this complete setup button. The optional step is you could get them to fill in any number of extra forms or information before they get presented with this button. So one way of doing that, for instance, you might create a user micro app, which if we look at our data, we've already defined one here. So that's this little form here. It's basically got 2 fields, got a username and a job title and a submit button. Now this is just a normal form, the way that Figma or Buzzy and Figma does it normally, basically, right? So it's just a form, 2 fields and a submit button. The important thing, because this has been defined as our special onboarding field, this form is now on this field, on this screen. So what you could do is you could put a check on this screen, this onboarding screen that a user gets taken to as part of this onboarding process. Check whether they have filled in this information. If they have, they get this onboarding view, which says, oh, sorry, the complete button, which says thanks very much, and they can click the button, complete their onboarding, and off they go. And from there on in, they have completed sign up. Next time they visit, they don't have to go through this. They'll automatically be taken to the start screen. If they haven't completed this form or submitted it, they get shown this form. So the way we can do that, so we've defined our user, we've already defined our app. If we jump back here, if we go here, that's our user app here. It's got no results at the moment. The way you would do that, and again, so I've kind of half marked this up. So we've got a form in here. There's our form. If you go to the design tab on the plugin, there we go. That's a component of type form, and it's for the micro app user in capture layout with a submit button. Now you can wrap that in a view, and then over here we wrap the onboarding button or whatever this thank you message is with the complete setup button. We can wrap that in another view. I haven't marked these up yet. The idea though is that when we do the check, first up we check whether a user's submitted the user form already, and we can show them this button. So that's kind of the first step we need to do. So we'll make this wrapper here around this button a view. So it's a component of type view. We'll give it a name and we'll call it user onboard. Call it user onboarding. Check. Okay, so that's our view. We've given it a name. The micro app name that this view is referring to is the user one. The layout mode is it's a results mode. We're looking for, is there a result there for this user who's at the moment looking at this screen? Now they'll only submit this once, so we only ever want to pull down one result for this particular user. Sorting we don't need to worry about, but the filtering, we filter it by creator. What that does is it looks at the results that have been submitted to that form. It only shows this current user, because remember they've already hit the login button and the login token, in their email. So Buzzy and your app knows who they are. And it checks that user form, which is over here, for any results created by that particular user and only that user. So they can't see anyone else's results. Owners and authors will be able to see everyone's results when they look, via the Buzzy backend. But here, the other thing to do, so we've gone to the settings for this user app, properties, we'll go to results, and who can view. Anyone can submit, because anyone can obviously fill in that form as part of the login process, but who can view? We only want owners, authors, and creators. So people can only see, unless they're owners and authors of your app, normal users can only see their own results there. So that's all that will return. So we've done that here. So we'll go back to here. So that's what we've done. That's what we've defined with this view. It basically says only show this if there is a result, and we're pulling down just one result because we don't need to check for more by this particular user, in which case we know they've submitted something here and they're good to hit the complete setup button. So that's this view, and now we need to switch the flip side to that if they haven't. So that was our results view. Now we've got the no results view over here. So it's the same thing, we'll make it a component of type view. And the micro app, it refers to, the component name, this is the user, what do we call it? User onboarding check. The micro app name was user. So by naming it the same as this view, means these two become flip sides of the same coin. If there's a result, this one will render because the user has submitted their onboarding form. If there's no result, we're about to define this. This one over here is called the no results layout. By naming it the same as this one, these two are now tied together. No result, we see the complete, with a result, we see the complete setup button. With no result, we see the form because they haven't submitted it yet. And that's it. And that's basically then, again, this will not work out of the box with the free version of Buzzy, but that's how you would define it in your own deployed version of Buzzy. So you've got a terms accept, go to an onboarding screen, have your optional form where a user can fill in additional info. Once they hit submit, you redirect. Well, that's the other important thing actually. You need to, on submitting that form, the action screen that you want to go to is the same screen again. You want to take them straight back to this screen basically and perform the check again, in which case it should return as there is a result and they see this thank you message with the complete setup button. Once they click that, just remember this button is defined as a special thing, special action type to do with login called complete setup, and that will set the flag on that user that yes, they completed their onboarding and they're good to go next time they log in. They don't need to go through this, they'll be taken straight to your app screen, which is there. So that, excuse the complexity, but that's basically how you would define the login and onboarding flow with Buzzy and the Figma plugin.